My parents won't let me sit at the same dining table because they heard I would bring misfortune to the family. My name is Jason Tran, and my seat at the dinner table has been empty for years, not because I was absent, but because they chose not to see me. Trust me, you'll regret skipping this story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. When I walked into the house that evening, the scent of ginger chicken and lemongrass pork filled the air. Familiar, homey. But even before I took off my shoes, I knew where I'd be eating. Not at the table, never at the table. I placed my backpack by the stairs, tried not to sigh too loud, and walked past the dining room like a ghost. They were all already seated, Dad at the head, Mom on his right, Mai across from her. 3 bowls, 3 pairs of chopsticks, no fourth. My mother glanced at me for half a second, then turned back to her rice. "Your food is in the kitchen," she said, as if offering me some favor. It wasn't even a question anymore, just a line in the script. Jason eats alone. I grabbed the bowl and plate they had prepared, set aside on the counter like a dog's dish, and sat at the small folding table in the corner facing the tiled wall. I tried to pretend the silence meant nothing, but I heard them talk and laugh just a few feet away, and I heard my name not once. I used to think they were just traditional, that maybe it was about hierarchy or saving space, or maybe I had done something wrong that I couldn't remember. But lately I'd begun to feel something uglier under the surface, like I wasn't just excluded, I was avoided. I heard it a few nights ago, the phrase that wouldn't leave my head since. "Don't let him near the altar," my mom whispered on the phone. "He brings shadows." That's what she said. Shadows. I didn't even believe in that stuff, fortune tellers, birth charts, curses. But apparently someone in my family did, and I was the target. I chewed my food slowly, barely tasting it, heart starting to pound. I wanted to walk over and say something. But what would I even ask? Why don't you want me near you? Why am I being treated like some bad omen? I used to be the kid who begged for approval. Straight A's, neat room, obedient to a fault. But no matter how well I did, there was always that distance. I never got answers, just a colder silence. After dinner, as I was washing my plate, I heard a faint noise behind me. My sister Mai had crept into the kitchen. She stood there, awkwardly holding her empty glass. She looked like she wanted to say something. "Do you know what's going on?" I asked quietly. "Is it about what Mom said?" Her lips pressed tight. I think you should ask her." "That's not an answer." She glanced toward the hallway, made sure no one was around, then whispered, "It's not you, Jason. It's something someone said a long time ago." "What did they say?" She shook her head. "I don't know everything. Just that they think your energy clashes with the family's, that you were born under a bad sign. I think it was Auntie Lynn who started it." I stared at her. "You don't believe that, do you?" "No," she said immediately. "Of course not. You're my brother. You're kind and smart and normal. But you know how Mom is, and Dad just follows." I wanted to laugh or scream. "So, I'm cursed? That's what they think." "I don't think they'd call it that. They'd say you bring misfortune. It's not about you doing anything, just existing." "Wow, that's comforting." She looked like she might cry. "I'm sorry." I dried my hands, walked past her, and went up to my room. But I didn't sleep. Instead, I remembered. There was a pattern, always had been. When my grandfather died, they didn't let me go to the funeral. I was 14. They said I had a fever, but I wasn't even coughing. I stayed home in my pajamas while they dressed in black and left in silence. I never saw Grandpa one last time. When my cousin had her wedding, they asked me to help park cars instead of attending the ceremony. When the family photos were taken, I was in the kitchen helping prep food, always behind the scenes, always just out of view. Even my high school graduation, I remember waving from the stage, scanning the crowd for my parents. They were there, but no camera, no claps, just a blank stare. They didn't even frame my diploma. It's still in a drawer upstairs. They treated me like something fragile, or worse, dangerous. At first I thought I was imagining it, but now the picture was forming, clear, sharp, and ugly. They didn't want me close because they believed I was the reason things went wrong, because some fortune teller whispered poison into their ears years ago. The stupid part, I still craved their approval, even now, even after all this. The next morning, my mother asked me to take out the trash. Same monotone voice, no acknowledgement of our conversation the night before. As I tied the bag, I asked casually, "Mom, why don't I sit at the table anymore?" She froze, just for a second, then busied herself wiping the already clean counter. "Don't ask foolish questions," she murmured. "Is it because of what Aunt Lynn said?" Her hand stopped. Her eyes didn't meet mine. I said, "Don't ask foolish questions." She left the room, and I stood there, holding the trash, feeling like it wasn't garbage I was carrying. It was the weight of their fear, their ignorance, their quiet betrayal. They wouldn't say it, but now I knew. To them, I wasn't just their son. I was the bad omen sitting too close to the rice bowl. I stopped trying to rationalize it. No amount of logic was going to undo years of superstition, years of avoidance wrapped in politeness, years of pain dressed up as tradition. But I still needed answers. I needed to know how deep this ran. I waited until my parents were out shopping and my sister was in her room. I went into their bedroom, closing the door behind me with careful hands like I was crossing some invisible boundary. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, a name, a date, a record of this belief, something that could tell me when the curse began. Their room was cold, meticulously clean. My father's suits lined the wall, starched and untouched. My mother's prayer altar in the corner flickered with half-melted candles. It smelled like dried sandalwood. I opened the drawer beside the altar and found what I didn't expect, a folded piece of yellowed paper, old and soft at the edges. An astrology reading handwritten in a language mix of Vietnamese and English. I could only make out pieces of it, born in the year of conflict. Clashing star. Inauspicious alignment with parental sign. Recommend minimal direct interaction, especially during shared meals or ceremonies. I stared at the line, especially during shared meals. That was it. That was where it came from. Someone scribbled a cosmic excuse to treat me like a ghost, and my parents followed it like scripture. I put the paper back and closed the drawer. The next day, I couldn't stop thinking about it, about how this one piece of paper determined the course of my life. At dinner, I decided I was done being quiet. I sat down at the dining table. Just sat, didn't ask, didn't wait. My father looked up from his rice bowl chopsticks in midair. My mother froze, then placed her spoon back down. "Jason," she said sharply, "your food is in the kitchen." "I know," I replied calmly, "but I'm fine right here." My heart was pounding. I wasn't sure what I expected, a shouting match, a tearful confession. But instead, my father cleared his throat and stood. "If you want to disrespect the house, do it somewhere else," he muttered, pushing his chair back. "Dad," I said, "I know about the chart." He stopped. My mother's face drained of color. "I found the fortune. The one saying, 'I bring misfortune.' The one that told you not to eat with me." Silence. My sister looked like she wanted to crawl into the floor. "You think I'm a curse?" I said, voice barely steady. "You think because of when I was born, I shouldn't be here." My father didn't respond. My mother quietly said, "It's not about belief. It's about precaution. That's all." "Precaution?" I scoffed. "You mean fear." Then I stood up, took my bowl, walked to the kitchen. The chair remained empty behind me. Later that night, my sister knocked on my door. She brought me a blanket and a cup of warm tea. Her eyes were red. "They started treating you differently when you were 6, she whispered. "That was when Aunt Lynn visited with her friend the fortune reader." I figured, I replied, voice flat. "Was it something I did?" Mai sat at the edge of my bed. "You got really sick that year. High fever. You nearly died. After that, they blamed everything on the timing of your birth. Every time something went wrong, it was you." "Why didn't they just abandon me altogether?" I asked bitterly. She looked down. "Because deep down, I think they still love you, but they're afraid, and fear eats love if you let it." That line stuck with me. Fear eats love if you let it. I wondered how many meals they skipped with me to avoid a fear that was never even mine. The following week, something small but big happened. My uncle, my mother's younger brother, came to visit. Uncle Min had always been kind to me. He wasn't around much, lived in Seattle, worked in tech. But whenever he visited, he brought thoughtful gifts. He asked real questions. He saw me. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years. He walked in, arms full of fruit and red envelopes, smiling. "Jason," he grinned, pulling me into a hug. "Man, you've grown." Looking sharp, I laughed awkwardly. "Thanks, Uncle." Dinner was already cooking, and I knew what would happen next. Except this time, something shifted. He saw me eating alone. "What's going on?" he asked, genuinely confused. Why are you sitting here? My mother responded too quickly. Oh, he prefers it. It's quieter. I didn't speak. My uncle raised an eyebrow. Really? Jason, you prefer sitting here. I hesitated. No, I don't. And then I watched something beautiful happen. He stared at my mother, then at my father, and said, Is this about that stupid reading from 20 years ago? My mom's eyes widened. My dad lowered his gaze. You're still following that, Uncle Min said, disbelief in his voice. You've let fear dictate how you treat your own son. No one responded. He walked over to me. Come sit at the table with me. I hesitated. Come on, he said. If Jason's bad luck, then I want to share it with him. So we sat, together, just the two of us, and they watched, shocked, angry, embarrassed, but they didn't stop us. That night, for the first time in years, I laughed at dinner. And it wasn't a curse. It was a crack in the walls they had built. The next morning, my uncle sat me down on the porch with 2 mugs of black coffee, one for him, one for me. It was still early. Mist clung to the edges of the yard. The house was quiet except for the hum of the kitchen fan. I need to tell you something, he said. I braced myself. It was my fault. I blinked. What, that chart, the one your parents follow? That fortune teller, Aunt Lynn, didn't just bring her over. I was the one who suggested it. My mouth dried. I was young. I'd just gone through something similar, a bad business deal. I got scared. I thought maybe if we could identify bad energy early, we could protect the family. So I paid her to read everyone in the family. And I was the unlucky one, I muttered. Uncle Min winced. She said your chart clashed with your parents, that you were born under a rare opposing star sign. She told your mom that too much emotional proximity could create instability. That's why they started pulling away. Do you believe that I used to? He said. I thought I was being wise. But now... No, not for a long time, and especially not after seeing you what they've done to you. I didn't know whether to thank him or scream. He took a sip of his coffee. The thing about belief is, it shapes behavior, and behavior becomes truth if you repeat it long enough. Your parents don't even see you as cursed anymore. They just act as if you are, because they always have. I nodded slowly. That made more sense than anything else I'd heard. He leaned in. You have a choice. You can either accept their version of you, or you can rewrite it. I wanted to rewrite it. I just didn't know how. The change didn't happen instantly. That first night when I sat at the table with Uncle Min, it wasn't some magical turning point. My mother didn't smile. My father didn't say a word. They let it happen because they didn't want to argue in front of a guest. The next evening, after Uncle Min had left, I tried again. I placed my bowl at the table. My mother stood there frozen, holding a ladle in her hand. This again she asked quietly. Yes, I said. You're not supposed to. Says. Who? Her lips tightened. She placed the ladle down and walked away. I sat alone at the table. The room felt colder than the kitchen ever had, but I stayed, because I wasn't going to sit in a corner anymore just to make their fear comfortable. That night, I called Mai into my room. I need to know everything, I told her. She sat down beside me, hesitating. There's not much else to say. I don't care if it's small. Just tell me what they did. She exhaled. Okay, when you were 7, you fell out of a tree and broke your arm. That same week, Dad's car got rear-ended. Mom said the two were connected. She told Aunt Lynn it was the sign. My eyes narrowed. What else, you weren't invited to Cousin Tuan's ceremony? Remember that I did. They said it was just for elders. It wasn't, she said. They said having you there would disrupt the harmony. And during my high school graduation, when they smiled and clapped for me, I saw Mom looking at you. She didn't smile once. My stomach twisted. I always felt guilty, Mai whispered, like I got the life you were supposed to have, just because I was born 2 years later in a luckier month. I looked at her, tears stinging on the backs of my eyes. It's not your fault. No. But I stayed quiet. Her voice cracked. I let them treat you like a shadow. I didn't speak. We just sat there, silent, but not alone. The next day, I made a choice. I printed that old astrology chart, the one I'd found in the drawer. I took a red pen and wrote across it in all caps, "This does not define me." I left it on the dining table, no note, no speech, just that. That evening, when I came down for dinner, there were 4 bowls. My seat had chopsticks. It wasn't an apology, but it was a beginning. If you were in this situation, would you forgive or take revenge? Comment below to let us know. I sat down at the dining table, heart pounding like it was the first day of school. 4 bowls, 4 sets of chopsticks. My name wasn't etched into anything, but this felt monumental, like a place had finally opened for me, not just physically, but symbolically. No one said anything, not a word. Mom served the rice. Dad ate in silence. Mai glanced at me with soft eyes, but didn't smile like she was afraid smiling would make it disappear. I didn't speak either, I just ate. Each bite was a mixture of old memories and something new, something almost like dignity. But then the moment ended. As I got up to wash my bowl, my father spoke for the first time in weeks. Don't mistake this for acceptance. The sentence landed like a slap. I paused at the sink. You can sit here, he added, but it doesn't mean we believe you're safe for the family. Safe? Like I was a wildfire or a disease. I turned slowly. Do you think I've ever felt safe in this house? He stared at me unreadable. I've lived here my entire life, afraid of taking up space, of being the reason for your bad day, of even sneezing at the wrong time in case you blame me for something falling apart. But sure, let's talk about safety. His jaw tightened. Mom looked down at her bowl like it was hiding her escape. I wasn't trying to provoke them. I wasn't trying to humiliate them. I was just tired, so tired of being cautious. Tired of keeping their comfort intact while I suffocated. I put down my bowl and walked out of the room. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept looping back to that word safe, as if I were a danger, as if I could snap and destroy them. And yet I was the one who had been kept away, who had missed birthdays and funerals, who had learned to celebrate wins alone, who had never been in the family photo albums unless I begged. I opened an old storage box in my closet full of photos, certificates, school projects, proof of my life not theirs. Tucked between a report card and a crumpled drawing of a robot I once made in 5th grade, I found an old card, a handmade one, scribbled with a child's handwriting. Happy Father's Day. I love you always, even if you don't look at me. It hit like a punch. I remembered making it. I was 10. He didn't say thank you, just put it on the shelf and walked away. And I kept loving him anyway. The next day, I took a walk through the neighborhood. I passed all the old familiar places, the park where Mai fell off her bike, the corner shop that sold lychee candy, the bench where I once sat for hours after a fight with Mom. But everything looked different now, not because the neighborhood changed, but because I had. I didn't want to be invisible anymore. I didn't want to carry their superstitions on my back like a burden I never asked for. I came back home, grabbed a stack of old photos, and sat at the dining table again, alone this time. One by one, I laid them out. Baby Jason, toddler Jason, school project Jason, high school Jason, college Jason, every version of me smiling, trying present. I wanted them to see me, all of me. Mom walked in first. She saw the photos, froze in the doorway. Why are these out? She asked quietly. I want to remember who I am, I said, because you've spent years acting like I was someone else. She said nothing, but she sat down, across from me. Her hands reached for one photo of me at age 9, beaming with a papier-mâché dragon. I remember this, she whispered. Do you remember how you told me not to bring it inside, that it would ruin the balance of the living room? She looked away. I didn't mean it like that. I know, but I heard it like that. She picked up another one, my high school graduation. I was proud, she said. You never said it. I didn't know how. That cracked something open in me. A painful, bitter knot that had lived under my ribs for years. I needed to hear it, I said, voice soft but shaking. I needed to know I mattered. She finally looked up, and her eyes for the first time in a long time were wet. Later that evening, my father came home. He didn't join us at the table, but I left one photo on the counter for him, the Father's Day card from when I was 10. No words, no demands, just a memory, just me trying. He didn't say anything that night, but I heard his footsteps in the early morning, the door to the drawer opening, the rustle of old paper. I didn't get an apology, but he left a small envelope by my bedroom door. Inside was a photo, me age 5, asleep in his arms. On the back he had written, "You were never the problem." The next few days passed like walking on a frozen lake, cautiously aware of the cracks beneath every step. They didn't say much, no big gestures, but the atmosphere was different, lighter maybe, or just quieter in a way that didn't feel like exile. I kept joining dinner. I didn't ask permission, I just sat, and they let me. But I knew it wasn't over. Not really, because they still hadn't acknowledged the root of it, the belief, the superstition, the idea that my existence was a threat to theirs. Until it was faced, this peace would always be fragile. Then one afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. "Hello, Jason, it's Aunt Lynn." Her voice jolted me like a glass of cold water. I hadn't heard from her in years. She was the one who had introduced the fortune teller, the one who had first planted the seed of fear in my parents' heads. "Can we meet?" she asked. "I'd like to talk, face to face." I hesitated. Every instinct told me to say no, but a deeper part of me, the part that needed closure, said yes. We met at a cafe across town, a quiet place with jasmine tea and too many mirrors. She looked older than I remembered, thinner, more tired, but still draped in charm and gentle words. "You've grown," she said, smiling. "You've been quiet," I replied. She nodded. "I owe you that." I didn't speak. I heard about the dinner, she said, and the photos, and the card. Of course she did. The family grapevine never died. She sipped her tea. I came to apologize. I waited. I was the one who hired Madame Train, the fortune reader. I brought her over to your house that day. I know. She told us your birth chart was dangerous, that it clashed with your parents' energy, their signs, their element cycles. She said you would cause imbalance, accidents, emotional discord, even death. I flinched. "And you believed her?" "I believed she was protecting us," Aunt Lynn said. "I thought I was doing something good for the family. I didn't think about what it would do to you." "You turned me into a ghost," I said, voice flat. "And they let it happen." She looked down at her cup. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "but you have to understand, in our world, people listen to these things. Superstition isn't just myth, it's how we survive. It's how we protect what we love." "No," I said, "it's how you control what you fear." She didn't respond. "You made me the villain of my own life. You told them I was a danger, and they erased me to feel safe. But I wasn't the danger. I was just a boy who wanted to sit with his family." A long pause. Then she did something I didn't expect. She cried, right there in the cafe. Quiet, graceful tears. "I've lived with the guilt for years," she said, "but I didn't know how to undo it, how to make it right." I exhaled slowly. "You can't make up for the past, but you can help fix the present." Her eyes met mine. "How? Tell them the truth." That evening, Aunt Lynn came to our house. My parents didn't know she was coming. They looked surprised, nervous, even when they opened the door. She didn't waste time. She sat in the living room, asked them both to sit, and said, "I lied to you." Then she told them everything. How she brought the fortune teller, how she exaggerated the reading, how she let fear color her interpretation, how she didn't challenge the narrative even as it grew cruel, how she never came back to help me once the damage began. My father didn't move. My mother stared at the floor. And then Aunt Lynn looked at me. "This boy isn't cursed," she said. "He never was. The only curse here is the silence we kept feeding." Later, after she left, I stayed in the living room, waiting to see what they'd say. Mom went to the kitchen. Dad stood by the window watching the night. Finally, he said, "We thought we were keeping you safe too." I blinked. From what might happen, from a fate we didn't understand. "That wasn't safety," I said. "That was exile." He nodded slowly. "You're right." It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever get from him. And it was enough, not because it erased the pain, but because it acknowledged it. That night, I went to bed with no anger in my chest, just a strange calm, a space that had once held shame, now held breath. And that was new. That was healing. Healing doesn't come in one big moment. It arrives in pieces. That week, I noticed the small things first. My bowl was no longer separate. My name was mentioned in conversations, not avoided. I caught my father looking at me once, not with suspicion, but with something like regret. Still, there were moments where the weight returned. A hesitation in my mother's eyes when I laughed too loudly. A pause in my father's voice when someone asked, "How's your son doing?" as if he forgot I existed until reminded. But something had changed in me. I no longer felt like a ghost waiting for permission to be seen. I started applying to more clients for my freelance design work, built a proper portfolio, redesigned my website. I worked late nights with music playing, the door open light, spilling down the hallway like I had nothing to hide. One night, as I walked past the living room, I heard my mother on the phone. She didn't know I was there. Yes, Jason's working from home. No, he's doing fine now. He's always been talented, just we made mistakes. A pause. No, he's not cursed. He's stronger than all of us. I stopped breathing for a second. She'd never said anything like that out loud. Not to me. Not to anyone. I didn't confront her about it. I didn't need to. A few days later, I got a text from Mai. Can you come with me to Grandma's shrine this weekend? I don't want to go alone. We hadn't gone together in years. Usually I was busy. Really, I was just tired of pretending to belong. But this time I replied, yes. Saturday came. The air was still thick with the scent of incense and dry earth. We knelt in front of the altar, our hands clasped, heads bowed. And for once, I didn't feel like I was asking forgiveness for something I didn't do. I felt still, rooted. Mai looked over at me mid-prayer. She smiled. You feel different? She whispered. I am different, I said. When we got home, Dad was in the backyard watering the little potted kumquat trees. He didn't look up when I approached. Do you believe in second chances? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, I believe they're earned. Slowly, I nodded. I'm not here to punish you, I told him. I'm not here to make you pay. I just want a family that sees me for who I am, not what they were told I might become. The hose made a soft hissing sound as he turned it off. I don't know how to do that, he said, but I want to try. And for my father, that was everything. Later that evening, I found my old family photo albums on the shelf. I opened them slowly, page by page, and there I was. Not often, but enough to prove I existed. A grainy shot of me in a yellow jacket at age 4. A school portrait taped in the corner of a page meant for my sister's soccer team. A birthday candle half lit beside me at a party I barely remembered. And then an empty page, blank, untouched. I grabbed a photo from my desk drawer, the one my uncle took when I finally sat at the table. Me half smiling, chopsticks in hand next to him. I pasted it onto the empty page. Underneath I wrote, this is where I came back. That night we had hot pot for dinner, a small celebration for Mai's work promotion. We clinked glasses of tea, laughed, passed tofu and mushrooms. My mom made a joke, and even Dad chuckled. And when I looked around the table, I realized, for the first time in a very long time, no one looked afraid. No one looked at me like I didn't belong. No one looked away. Reclaiming space isn't just about where you sit. It's about what you allow yourself to remember and what you stop running from. After that hot pot dinner, something inside me clicked. I didn't just want to exist in the present. I wanted to reclaim the parts of my past that had been denied, buried, or stolen in silence. So I made a list, a literal handwritten list. Places I wasn't allowed to be, Grandpa's funeral, Cousin Tuan's wedding, the altar during Lunar New Year, my own graduation celebration, family group photos, the dining table. I looked at it for a long time, and then I made another list, places I will return to. It was time. I started small, Grandpa's grave. I hadn't been there since he passed when I was 14. They told me I had the flu and shouldn't risk getting others sick, but I was fine. I was always fine. I remember lying in bed that day, dressed in black slacks and a wrinkled white shirt, thinking that maybe the real reason was they just didn't want me near death, as if I might somehow invite it. This time I went alone, brought flowers, knelt. The cemetery was quiet, the wind high. I laid my hand on the stone. Hi, Grandpa, I whispered. I'm sorry I wasn't here. A part of me expected the wind to change, for something to feel heavy, but it didn't. Instead, a strange warmth spread in my chest, like the earth itself was listening. I lit 3 sticks of incense, pressed my forehead to the ground, and let go of the shame. Next was the family altar. Lunar New Year was approaching, a time when family gathered, offered thanks, and paid respect. Every year I'd been asked to stay back, not in a cruel way, just excluded gently. But this year I stood beside Mai, holding a tray of fruit and tea. I wore a pressed shirt, my back straight, my eyes clear. When it was time to kneel, my mother glanced at me, a flicker of hesitation. I waited, and then she nodded, almost imperceptibly. I stepped forward and placed my offering down with the others. Nothing burned. No thunder rolled in. The ancestors didn't strike me down. I was just there, like I always should have been. The next reclaiming was harder. My graduation, not the ceremony that had long passed, but the celebration I never had. They threw a huge dinner for Mai when she graduated, booked a restaurant, invited relatives, posted photos, toasted her name. When it was my turn, I got takeout and a vague good job, and that was it. So I decided to host my own. I sent a group text to my family. I'm inviting you all to dinner this weekend. No occasion, just something I should have had years ago. The responses were mixed. Mai said she'd be there. Dad replied with a thumbs up. Mom, silence. But when Saturday came, they showed up. I'd cooked everything myself. Clay pot fish, fried spring rolls, stir-fried morning glory, even dessert cheba mao. As they sat down, I stood. I never got a celebration when I graduated, I said, calmly. Maybe you didn't realize. Maybe you thought I didn't need it. But I did. Silence. This isn't about guilt. This is about balance. So tonight I want to celebrate what should have always been honored. I raised my glass to reclaiming what's mine. They clinked glasses with me, quietly, slowly, but they did. And for the first time I gave myself the recognition I had waited years to receive. Later that night, as we cleaned the dishes, my mom lingered beside me at the sink. I didn't know how to celebrate you back then, she said. I didn't know if I was allowed to, or if I should. Why I asked. Because I thought, the more attention we gave you, the more the balance would tip. That's what she told me. The fortune teller. She nodded. But I was wrong. About everything. I handed her a plate. Then let's keep getting it right. One dish at a time. She smiled faintly. One dish at a time. That night I opened a new journal. At the top I wrote, I do not carry misfortune. I carry memory and I carry truth. And then I let myself rest. Not out of exhaustion, but because I finally could. I thought the hardest part was over. That once my parents accepted me, everything else would fall into place. But healing in private doesn't mean healing in public. And some wounds live in whispers, especially in families like mine. It started at Uncle Bao's birthday party. The whole extended family gathered dozens of cousins, aunts, uncles, and elders I barely saw more than once a year. They rented a banquet hall with red lanterns and a giant seafood buffet. I arrived with Mai, feeling cautiously optimistic, until I saw them. My parents already seated, but their chairs were pulled ever so slightly, away from mine. No one said anything, but the distance said it all. It wasn't rejection, not entirely. It was hesitation, the kind of space people give to something they still don't trust. I took my seat, smiled anyway, tried to engage, asked about my cousin's new job, complimented the food, laughed when someone made a joke about aging, but I felt it, the murmur, the glances, the slight pause in conversation when I leaned in, and then I heard it just loud enough to sting. Isn't that the boy with the curse? Didn't they say he brings misfortune? I turned and there they were, two of my aunts, whispering like children telling ghost stories. I stood, calmly, walked over. They froze. One of them gave a weak smile. Jason, you've grown. I heard what you said. Awkward silence. I'm not here to shame you, I said, but I want you to understand what it does to someone, to hear that, to grow up with it, to live under it. They didn't know where to look. Do I look cursed to you now? I asked gently. Do I seem like someone who's brought harm to anyone here? They muttered some half-hearted denial. No, of course not. It was just something from long ago. Then let's leave it there, I said, in the past, where it belongs. Later in the hallway outside the banquet room, I ran into Uncle Bao himself. He put a hand on my shoulder. I heard what happened. I braced for more judgment, but he looked me in the eyes and said, You were brave. Was I? He nodded. You're doing what most people can't, turning family ghosts into memories, not curses. That sentence stayed with me. After the party, I got messages. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in years texted, I used to wonder why you were never around. Now I know. I'm sorry. Another cousin wrote, Thank you for speaking up. I was told I had a bad birth star too. They made me sit out my own cousin's wedding. You're not alone. And that's when it hit me I wasn't the only one. There were others, scattered across the family tree, invisible in different ways. The quiet ones, the ones labeled different, the ones who had been erased quietly with a smile. I started writing again, not for a website, not for a client, for me. I wrote about the dining table, about the silence, about the curse that was never mine, but lived in my skin like it belonged. And then I published it on a blog I used to run during college. I titled it The Family Curse That Wasn't Mine. It spread faster than I expected. Old friends messaged me, strangers left comments, others shared their own stories about cultural superstitions, about being excluded, about trying to earn love that was already theirs by birthright. I wasn't alone, and that changed everything. One evening, my father knocked on my door. He never knocked, ever. He stepped in holding a printed copy of the blog post. I read it. I said nothing. I didn't know how badly we hurt you. I swallowed. I thought we were doing what was right, but maybe we were just afraid of being wrong. I nodded slowly. You were wrong. I know. He sat down. I want to change, he said, but I don't know how to be different. You don't have to fix the past, I said. Just stop repeating it. He exhaled. I'll try. And in that moment, I believed him. The red envelope sat on the counter like a test. Thick, stiff paper, gold trim, traditional calligraphy. It wasn't just a formality, it was a statement. When I slid the card out, my hands trembled slightly. You are invited to the ancestral offering ceremony, honoring great-grandfather Tran. March 3rd, 10 a.m. Family representatives. Tran Min, Tran Bao, Tran Mai, Tran Jason. There it was. My name, printed clearly among the direct family line. Not as an assistant, not as +1, not even in the corner, front, center, real. I held the card against my chest for a moment, unsure what I was even feeling. Was this victory, or was it just them finally catching up to what I'd known all along? When I showed Mai the invitation, she smiled gently. They're trying. I laughed once, trying not to be haunted. No, she said, trying to be human. But the truth was, I didn't know if I wanted to go. After all the years of being ignored, erased, and whispered about, was showing up now a sign of healing or weakness? What if they were just including me out of guilt? What if this was their way of checking a box, performing inclusion just enough to stop the bleeding? What if I just don't go? I asked her. She paused. Then you let them write the final version of the story. I looked at her. If you show up on your terms, you write your ending. You take your place. Not the one they give you, the one that was always yours. Her words settled like truth in my chest. The morning of the ceremony, I stood in front of the mirror longer than usual. I wore a deep navy owl dye, ironed crisply silver embroidered patterns down the sleeves, like waves threading through the fabric. My shoes were polished, my hair trimmed clean. I looked into my own reflection, and for the first time in years, I saw not a question, but a statement. I am not an omen. I am not a burden. I am not something to be feared. I am family. I belong. Even when they tried to make me disappear, I stayed. The ancestral house was humming when I arrived. Red lanterns swung gently in the wind. The scent of incense clung thick to the air. Plastic folding chairs lined the courtyard. A table was already full of offerings, boiled chicken, oranges, sticky rice, and tea. I stepped through the archway, and it was like stepping into a theater. Heads turned, murmurs followed, smiles offered with just a beat too much hesitation. I kept walking. Mai found me near the gate. She squeezed my hand. You look good. I feel... I stopped. Different. Strong, she finished. Then came the roll call, the moment I dreaded and anticipated in equal measure. The elder stood in front of the incense urn, voice echoing. We call forth the honored to light incense on behalf of the Tran bloodline. The names came one by one, uncles, older cousins, even Mai, and then Tran Jason. I stepped forward. I could feel the air thicken with silence, as if people were waiting for the ceiling to fall. But I didn't look around. I didn't bow to their discomfort. I bowed to my ancestors, to the generations before me, to the ones I'd never been allowed to honor until now. I lit the 3 sticks of incense, slowly, pressed them into the urn. Then I whispered softly, I was always part of this family, even when you didn't see me, and I meant it, every word. As I turned to step back, I felt a hand brush my shoulder. My father. He looked strange in his formal owl dye stiff, slightly uncomfortable as though wearing his guilt on the outside. But his eyes, they weren't cold. You did well, he said. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat. Thanks. Then barely above a whisper, your grandfather would have been proud. I didn't respond, because if I had, I would have broken. The ceremony continued, but I was somewhere else inside myself, sitting with my younger version, the boy who used to eat alone in the kitchen while the table filled without him. That boy had waited for this, not for applause, not even for validation, just a moment where he could say, I made it to the table. I lit the incense. I was seen. After the ceremony, during the tea and fruit in the courtyard, two of my aunts, the ones who used to whisper about my curse, approached me. They offered polite smiles, too polished. We didn't expect to see you today, one said. I'm sure, I replied calmly. Another tried to smooth things over. You've turned out very well. Handsome, confident, very respectable. I said nothing. Then one of them added, we may have misjudged things years ago. I looked her in the eyes. You didn't misjudge. You labeled, you erased, but I lived anyway. They stared at me speechless. I'm not asking for forgiveness, I said. Just don't pretend you didn't help build the silence. And I walked away. Because sometimes healing means not making peace with everyone. Sometimes healing means standing up and walking right through the fire without needing applause on the other side. That night, back in my room, I took off the navy owl dye and laid it gently across my bed. The scent of incense still clung to the fabric, but for the first time it didn't smell like superstition. It smelled like closure, like dignity, like a seat that was finally unquestionably mine. After the ceremony, I thought I'd feel triumphant. I thought there'd be a sense of completion, like all the pieces had finally snapped into place. But what I felt was quiet, not empty, not sad, just still. It was like standing in the eye of a storm that had finally passed. The next few days, life returned to its rhythm. Work, groceries, dinners with long walks. My parents didn't revert, but they didn't transform into idealized versions of themselves either. They were still them, stiff in their affection, awkward with apologies, but they tried. My father started asking about my clients. My mother left oranges in my room, her version of a peace offering. They didn't say sorry. They said less of the things that used to hurt, and sometimes that's the beginning. One night, while sorting through an old USB of scanned documents and photos, I found something unexpected. A video, grainy, poor lighting, dated June 2005. I clicked play. There I was, 8 years old, standing at a school talent show, holding a paper microphone, lip-syncing to some cheesy pop song with two other kids. The camera wobbled. Laughter in the background. Then someone said, "That's Jason. He's not bad. Just hope this year goes better. His energy's been strange lately." The voice was my mother's. I froze. There it was, in her own words. Even then I wasn't just her son. I was a variable, a question mark, a threat to stability. I paused the video. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I just sat with it. I realized that little boy on screen was doing everything right, trying to belong, trying to shine, trying not to be the bad energy everyone warned about. He didn't need to be forgiven. He needed to be seen. That night, I wrote him a letter. To the boy in the kitchen, the one with the cold plate and warm heart. "Dear Jason, I know you're confused. You think if you just behave, smile, do well in school, things will change. That one day, they'll let you sit at the table. That one day, they'll say we were wrong, you're not a curse. But they don't, and you start to believe maybe they're right, that something inside you is broken, that maybe love is something you have to earn, and even then it's not guaranteed. But listen to me, you are not broken. You are not cursed. You were simply born into a story someone else wrote, and now you're learning how to write your own. You don't need their approval to exist. You don't need to be perfect to deserve a seat. And one day, I promise you, you will stand tall in the very place they tried to erase you from. You will speak and they will listen. You will belong not because they finally allowed it, but because you never stopped belonging. It's going to be hard. You'll carry silence like armor. You'll doubt yourself. But you'll make it through. And when you do, you'll turn around, look at everything they denied you, and reclaim it. All of it. I'm proud of you. Even when no one else said it, I am. Keep going. Love me." When I finished the letter, I folded it and placed it into a small wooden box where I kept my most personal things. Not to forget, but to remember, from a place of strength, not pain. The next morning, my father called me into the living room. He was holding a photo frame, an old one slightly chipped. Inside was the picture I'd pasted into the family album weeks ago, me and Uncle Min sitting at the table. The day I took my place, he held it out. "We want to hang this," he said, "in the hallway, with the others." I blinked. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "It's time." My mother was nearby arranging flowers on the altar. She glanced over, didn't say anything, but her eyes held something close to recognition. I took the frame, found the empty hook in the hallway wall, pressed the nail in, and hung the photo, right there, beside the others. No gap, no lower shelf, no glass fogging over, just me, visible, permanent, home. The frame on the wall changed more than just the hallway. It shifted something in the house, a quiet rebalancing. People started noticing. Relatives who came by didn't look away as much. Some even asked about the photo. One of them, a cousin I hadn't seen since high school, stood in front of it and said, "I never realized they left you out." I gave a half smile. Most people didn't, but now they were starting to. Around the same time, I got an email from a stranger. Subject line: "Your blog saved me." The message was from a woman in Toronto. She wrote that she'd stumbled across my post, "The Family Curse That Wasn't Mine," and read it in tears. Her family had told her the same thing, that her birth star brought bad energy. She'd been excluded from weddings, holidays, even her own parents' anniversary dinner. Reading my words made her feel for the first time that she wasn't imagining it. I thought I was the only one, she wrote. "You showed me I'm not broken, just misjudged." That email shattered me in the best way. More messages followed. From Australia, California, Hanoi, Paris. All kinds of people, different ages, different backgrounds, all saying the same thing. They told me I was cursed. They told me I didn't belong. "I've eaten in the kitchen too." I started replying one by one. Some I cried through, some I saved, and then I did something bold. I opened the blog again and posted a new entry. Title: "To everyone who's ever been treated like a bad omen. You are not unlucky. You are not invisible. You are not the reason things went wrong. You are simply living in a world too afraid to question its inherited fears." I signed it Jason, former kitchen seat survivor. The post went viral. I woke up the next day to hundreds of comments, people tagging siblings, people writing essays, people saying I'm going to show this to my mom. Then came media requests, a podcast, a small TV interview, even a psychology student from Singapore who wanted to include my story in her thesis. At first I hesitated. Did I want this part of my life out in the open? But then I remembered that little boy with the cold plate listening to the sound of laughter from the other room. He would have wanted this. He needed it. So I said yes. On the podcast, the host asked, "What do you say to families who believe these traditions are protecting them?" I took a breath and said, "Fear isn't the same as love. Love draws people closer. Fear pushes them away. If a tradition forces you to cast someone out, it's not protecting your family. It's wounding it." There was a pause, then a quiet "thank you." That episode exploded, and soon my blog wasn't just a blog, it was a movement. People began sharing photos of themselves at family tables with captions like "finally invited back in," "not cursed, just late to dinner, kitchen no more." I created a hashtag, Earthsulch, I am not misfortune. Within weeks it was trending in niche circles, therapists were referencing it, community groups were having discussions, and I realized I wasn't just healing, I was helping others heal too. My parents noticed. They didn't say much, but one night while we were having dinner, my dad asked all these people. They really went through the same thing. I nodded. Worse sometimes. He picked at his rice for a moment, then said, "I used to think you were just being sensitive." I didn't answer, because finally he did. I was wrong. That was it. 3 words, no drama. But it landed like a thunderclap, because in our family, in our culture, those words meant everything. The next day, my mother brought out an old album, one I'd never seen before. Inside were pictures of me, not just the ones I remembered, but moments I thought had been discarded. My first piano recital, a school art exhibit, me helping her in the kitchen, flour dusting my hair. She pointed at one and said I kept these. I just didn't know how to show them. I looked at her and realized, even silence can hold love. It just doesn't always know how to speak. That night, I posted one last blog entry titled "What We Do With Our Seat at the Table." I wrote, "It's not enough to be allowed back in. We must ask who else is still sitting alone in the kitchen, and we must bring them with us. Because healing isn't just personal, it's collective, it's generational." I closed the laptop and sat back. I didn't feel like a ghost anymore. I felt like a voice, a force, a sun. I always thought the climax of my story would be a grand confrontation. Someone standing shouting, a dramatic apology. The curse lifted like fog, the table set again, and everyone clapping. But that's not how healing works. There was no applause, no cinematic ending, just small moments one after another until the weight quietly left my chest. And suddenly, There was air, real full, clean air. I could finally breathe like I wasn't holding something in. I began spending more time with my parents, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Not because I needed them to love me a certain way, but because I'd stopped waiting for them to define who I was. One evening, we cooked dinner together. All three of us, no unspoken tension, no hovering ghost of superstition. Just hands chopping vegetables, the smell of garlic, and overlapping voices in the kitchen. My mom asked if I could show her how to use Canva. My dad asked me to help him install a new speaker system. Simple things, but real things. Things that meant we see you now. The bridge came into my room with a small envelope one night. "I found this," she said. "You gave it to me when I was 13. I opened it. It was a hand-drawn birthday card, badly illustrated, full of inside jokes. On the back I'd written, "Even if I'm not at the table, I'll always be your big brother. Don't forget me." I ran my fingers over the faded ink. I didn't cry, but something inside me stood still for a long time. Then I whispered, "He made it back." One weekend, I hosted a gathering, not a party, not a celebration, just a gathering, for everyone who had written to me, anyone within driving distance who had been told they were cursed unlucky or unwanted. We rented a small community space, set out chairs, brought food, made name tags that simply read "Kitchen No More." People shared stories. One woman talked about being left out of her own engagement party because her horoscope didn't match her fiancé's mother's. A man shared how his sister had been deemed misfortune after a childhood illness and was never photographed again. One person broke down midway through and simply said, "I thought I was imagining it all this time." We cried, we laughed, we hugged. It was the loudest silence I'd ever heard, the collective sound of people being seen for the first time. Near the end, someone asked me, "How did you keep going?" I paused, then said, "Because I wanted to become the person the boy in the kitchen could have looked up to." That line stayed with me even after the chairs were stacked and the food was cleared, because it was true. That boy alone with his cold plate and warm hope, he waited for someone like me to arrive. And I did. Now the hallway in our house is full of photos, not just mine, everyone's, but mine are placed right where they should have always been, in between, not beneath, among, not aside. And my name is no longer whispered, it's said with clarity, with presence. Sometimes it's still hard, not everyone changed. Some relatives still hold on to superstition like it's a lifeline. But the difference now, I no longer shrink to make them feel safe. There's one last thing I did. I went back to that little folding kitchen table, the one where I used to eat alone. It's still there, tucked near the corner. I sat at it just once. No food, no sadness, just memory. And I whispered, "Thank you for holding me when no one else would." Then I stood, folded the table up and stored it away, not out of shame, but because I didn't need it anymore. Now, when people come to our home, they ask about the photos, the story, the blog. Sometimes they ask if I regret anything, and I always say no, because in losing the table I found myself, and in reclaiming my seat I helped others find theirs. So if you've ever been left out, if your family has made you feel like a secret or a shadow, hear this. You are not a curse. You are not misfortune. You are the miracle they couldn't see until now. I'm Jason Tran. I was once erased. Now I help others rewrite. If this story resonated with you, share it. And if you've ever felt like a stranger in your own family, leave a comment below. Let others know they're not alone. Subscribe to Ethan's Way for more stories like this. Stories that break silence and bring truth to light. Thank you for listening.